I am Vinnie Tortorich. Folks, your good intentions have been stolen. But don't worry, I'm here to help you get them back. You may be soft and succulent at the beginning of this process, but hang in there. Before long, you will be lean and mean, guaranteed. Rawhide. That's what I think about when I think about cattle and farming and all that good stuff, because I got to be honest with you. When I was a kid, I grew up around a lot of people, had a lot of cattle. They do that in Louisiana. I know that sounds weird. Everyone thinks all the cattle somehow magically comes from Texas because they got the big stupid longhorns out there. But that ain't true. A lot of cattle come from a lot of places. Or, well, let me correct that. A lot of cattle used to come from a lot of places. That's not the truth anymore. Every time you look around, another farm is gone. I've had farmers on this show before, cattle ranchers, cattle farmers, wherever you are in the country, they call it something different. I've had these guys on the show before. I've had these professors of agronomy on the show talking about it. And the one thing I know for sure is that we're not doing the right thing by getting rid of ruminants, especially ruminants we raise. You know, it's funny, the vegans are out there yelling and screaming. Oh, wait a minute. Well, don't eat anything with a face. We don't want to have cattle anymore. Well, what, you're going to kill Bambi too because that's a ruminant? What else do you want to kill? What else do you want to get rid of? Well, we're going to learn about that today because there's a guy here. He's been around it for a long time, and I'm pretty sure he's seen things come and go more than once. I'm talking about none other than Mr. Will Harris. Yeah. How's it going, Will?
Doing good, Vinny. Thank you for having me on tonight.
No, I appreciate you being on, sir. Will, did I get that right about cattle and what's going on out there?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we've got less cattle in this country since 1940. The cattle population has shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. Beef consumption is up, which means more and more beef is being imported from other countries.
Does that also raise the price of beef?
The price is record high, and I'm sure that the cattle inventory has an impact on that. Probably what has more impact on that is 85% of the beef in this country is sold by 4 companies. And that's a lot of market concentration.
Can we name those companies, Will?
Oh, I don't know if I can or not. Tyson, IBP. You know, I should know them, but the two Brazilian companies, and they don't come to my mind.
Cargill, one of them. Is that one of? Maybe Cargill. Is that one of them?
The Cargill may not be. I don't think it is. So they in the beef business. They're not one of those big 4 companies.
Yeah,
I should have looked that up. I didn't.
Well, that's okay. But we know it's 4 companies, and look, I think we all agree. You know, whenever I have lively conversations with vegans, because I always like to talk to everyone, right? People go, "Oh, you hate vegans." Like, no. I would love to have a vegan on this show every week if I could, because I want to know how they think. I'm not one of these. That's why we're going to talk about politics on this show, because both sides have a point, right? Every side has a point, and everybody thinks they're right. But the one thing I think the vegans get wrong is, you know, we can agree on a lot of things. You want to eat whole, good, wholesome food. They're just leaving out the most important nutrient, you know, one of the most important foods you can have, which is red meat. But we always agree on one thing. Nobody likes factory farming. Could we agree on that here?
Yeah, you know, you come in on vegans. I'll add one thing to that. I agree with you, but I'll add one thing to it. Mm-hmm. You know, there are vegans, vegetarians, and those are people who choose to not eat meat. And I would go to war to defend those people's right to not eat meat if they don't want to. My problem is with what I call militant vegans or vegetarians, and they've made the decision that no one shall eat meat, and that's not okay. They don't get to make that decision.
Well, again, well, I knew you and I would get along because we're on the same page about that. I always said about, politics. It's like people say, well, what side are you on? It's like, it doesn't matter. I'm an American and I believe everyone's got the right to say whatever the hell they want, but they don't have the right to impede someone else from saying what the hell they want, whether you're on the right, left, or the middle. And the same, I never used to see meat eaters try to change a vegan's opinion, but vegans will stand in the way and walk into restaurants and as you said, not all vegans, militant vegans, um, or they will the ones that are worse. Yeah, look, we see it in restaurants. Well, they'll walk in and they'll go, meat is murder, blah 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 blah. We've heard it all before. Been hearing it since the '60s. Okay, meat is murder. Great. I don't care about those people because all they're doing is ruining someone's dining experience for one evening. I'll tell you the people I have trouble with. These doctors who lie, medical doctors like Michael Greger and, a few of them, Clapper. I could go down the list. There's a bunch of vegan doctors who just whole cloth make up stuff that is just not true about, meat consumption at all. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I know a lot about animal welfare and regenerative land management and impoverished rural communities. I don't think I know a lot about health and nutrition. I have some opinions, but I really try hard to withhold my opinions because there are experts that know these things much better than I do. When I first went in the beef business, I was a cattleman all my life, but I went in the beef business. I was asked to speak at a little gathering somewhere. And the guy in front of me was a farmer like me, a rancher, whatever you want to call it. And he stood up and talked a lot about conjugated linolenic acid and omega-3s and omega-6s and just on and on and on. And I thought he sounded incredibly stupid. And I made myself a promise that I was going to talk about the things I know a lot about and defer to experts on things I don't know a lot about. So my comments are on animal welfare, regenerative land management, and restarting this local rural economy.
Well, let's talk about that. So you've been in the beef business for a long time. How did you start out? Is it a family business? Take me to the beginning, Will.
Okay, well, the beginning is way back there. My great-grandfather started this farm in 1866. I am the fourth generation on the farm. My daughters are the fifth, and they got babies of the sixth. But my great-grandfather ran the farm. My grandfather ran the farm, and they ran it as a tiny, tiny little food chain. They raised animals and had a garden, and they sold. And every day before day, 6 days a week, they woke up and their employees and they slaughtered something on the farm. Mm-hmm. Might have been a cow, might have been 2 or 3 hogs, might have been 100 chickens, whatever it was. Brought it on a mule-drawn wagon to Bluffton, this little town I'm sitting in, 2.5 miles from the farm, and basically peddled the meat. My dad, born in 1920, took over the farm post-World War II. And he really industrialized the farm. On his watch, it became a monocultural cattle farm. And he ran it that way successfully for his career. I went to the University of Georgia, majored in animal science, came home and ran it as a very industrial, monocultural cattle farm, just like my dad. And I loved it, and I made money doing it. Not a lot. We weren't rich people, but we made money. I paid taxes every year. I never lost money when I was farming industrially. And I farmed that way for 20 years, and then I chose to move into this very different way of running the farm. And I did have some years I lost money, but we're profitable now.
I want to get into that, but I got to do a quick ad here, folks. Jasper.co/Vinnie will save you $300 on your Jasper air scrubber for your house. You guys know the story. I've been talking about it for a while now. My life was changed. They sent me one of these things for free. I set it up in my basement with my gym. And when it came time to clean my Concept 2, the impellers on the Concept 2, there was no dust, there was no grime in there was nothing. I couldn't figure it out because I had done as much exercise on that thing as I had done the year before, about 1 million meters. Yet there was not even an inkling to anything close to what was on there the year before or the year before that. I couldn't figure it out. Every day I just stared at that machine and said, how in the hell did this happen? Until I looked at that Jasper and went, could this possibly be it? Turns out it was. Jasper.co, JASPR. There's no E in there. Jasper.co/Vinnie will save you $300 if you go right now and get an air scrubber. Go get as many. People have bought as many as 6 of these. You really want these things. Now, the guy that bought 6, I'm pretty sure he didn't put them all in one house. He must have a business or something, or maybe he's got allergies or whatever, and he wants to stay away from all those allergies whenever springtime comes up. I have 2 in my house. My wife is talking about a 3rd one, so I think we're going to get a 3rd one here. Jasper.co/Vinnie will save you $300 every single time. We're talking to Will Harris of White Oak Pasture. You could go to Will Harris, White Oak Pasture, and check out what they're doing there. Well, you've seen every side of it. Your grandfather was doing everything from slaughtering chickens and hogs and what have you. Your father took over, turned it into an industrialized farm. He was successful. You were successful. You can look at your tax returns. Everybody's doing great. And then you decide to do it a different way. I come from a place in the world where if it ain't broken, why fix it? You were making money. What made you change your mind?
I loved what I did for a long time, but after 20 years, I was loving it less and less. And I think it's because I became aware of the unintended consequences that had been oblivious to me prior to that. And this is not very flattering, but I was a very, very heavy-handed cattleman. If the label instructions called for 1 pint per acre, I would put a quart. If it called for 1 cc per 100 pounds, I would give them 2 cc's per 100 pounds, and so on. And I think because I was such a heavy-handed user of those technologies, I became aware of the unintended consequences. I was not more sensitive to it than my neighbors, but I was more heavy-handed than my neighbors. But I did become increasingly aware, and I didn't like it, and I wanted to do something different, and I started moving away from it, and 25 years later, I'm still moving away from it.
When you say moving away from it, what exactly? Because people are going to say, "Wait, he's talking about pints and quarts." I'm guessing whatever you're adding to either feed or, I used to help my friends, bring the cattle in, and they would have to, give them all different kinds of, they would put shots in them and they would squeeze stuff into their mouth and whatever. I never knew what it was. I was just a guy on the horse because I love riding horses, right? So, what exactly were you doing back then that you're doing?
So a lot of pharmaceuticals, we would give cattle that weren't sick. We would give them antibiotics because it made them gain weight faster. We would give them hormone implants, a little pellet in the ear. But any pharmaceutical that we would give them, I just thought more would be better. Just very heavy-handed in that way. The same with pesticides. If the label called for a pint to the acre, I would put a quart to the acre. Mm-hmm. I just had the mindset that if a little do a little good, more will do more good. The same with tillage. If I could run over the land with the tractor and cultivator once, then it was just better to run over it 2 or 3 or 4 times. So on and on. And what I had not realized previously is that there are downsides to all of these technologies. And as I became more focused on it, I found it to be more repugnant, and I didn't want to be part of it anymore. So I didn't cut back on it. I ceased to do it. And that was pretty painful economically. And in retrospect, that probably was not the best way to do it, but that's what I did. And we survived it. And now I don't miss it anymore. But it was very addictive. You know, I've never done cocaine, but I feel like using those technologies was a lot like using cocaine. You just got a tremendous boost from it, tremendous benefit from it, not physically, but for the farm, economically and production wise. And it's just hard to give it up.
Yeah, you and I agree on that. You know, I've never done an illicit drug in my life. I barely drink ever. And my wife said to me, she goes, "How did you make it through the 70s, the 80s? You went to college in New Orleans. How did you make it through?" I never drank until I was 35. She goes, I said, "Because, honey, the thing that makes me great, the thing that made me a good athlete was excess. I did everything to excess. I knew if I ever tried marijuana, I would have used all of the marijuana. Or if I had tried cocaine, I would have used it till I died. And so I just stayed away from drugs. You know, I stayed with other excesses, you know, like overtraining and all that fun stuff that happens. But you don't die from that. You just get hurt, and then you go, "Wait, I'm not going to do that again." And it sounds like you got to that same place. Whenever you were telling stories, like, "Well, if I till it once, that's good. If I till it 4 times, that's 4 times gooder," as I would always say. And the thing that makes you great is the thing that ends up killing you. What happened when you stopped, when you went cold turkey? And if you don't mind me asking, what year was that? How long ago was it?
That was in the mid '90s. It didn't happen all at one time, but through the mid '90s, I can remember in going into the woods and just 20 yards from my field, just out on the edge of the forest, and getting a handful of soil and walking out in my field 20 yards away and getting a handful of dirt and just observing the difference. You know, one was full of life. You know, some of it you could see, some of it you couldn't see, and the other one was just a dead mineral medium. And that was had a very profound effect on me. And I knew the difference in that dirt and the soil. The difference was chemical fertilizers, pesticides, and tillage. So,
Yeah.
I was not the best student the University of Georgia had, but I could figure out that if you know what's causing something, maybe you should not, and you don't like it, maybe you should not do that anymore.
Yeah. You only have to touch the stove one time to realize I don't need to touch it again. So it's got to be, and I could call you a hero. You're there. I'm sure you got a family to support. You mentioned you got kids and grandkids and everything else. You got a family to support, and you have a decision to make, right? You're looking at this going, "I got a bunch of dead land here. And when I pick up the soil over there, it's got worms and bugs and everything else in it. It's probably a different color, probably nice and dark and black." You got a decision to make. And you have to know at that point, it could cost you and it could break you. How do you navigate that back in 1990, whatever?
Well, I would love for it to be the way you described it, and I was just a brave soul and all those things. But that's really not the way that was. It was really more naivety than it was courage. You know, I'd inherited a paid for farm. I'd been working it for 20 years. I'd never lost money. I'd never made a hell of a lot of money, but I never lost money. And I guess I don't think I thought you could lose money. Again, I'd never made much, but I'd always been profitable and never had a cash flow problem. I have now, but I didn't prior to that. So it was it didn't seem to take a lot of courage to do it. Now, after I got into it, I saw the harsh economic realities of doing what I had done, and by that time there was no way out except the other side. I was in it, so that
Yeah.
and had I had the ability to back out of it at that point, I probably would have. I don't know if I would or not, but I probably would have. Now I'm glad I didn't. Now I'm very glad that it worked. We've regained profitability, but it was there was some really trying economic times. I never didn't pay anybody. I always got everybody paid one way or the other. But I was going broke and would have gone broke had things not changed.
Yeah, I know that feeling. I recently, people that know the podcast know the story. I own a few companies. One of them, one of my favorite and main companies is a vitamin company. And I had someone else running it and things went south. And I had to take it over. And when you hire accountants and lawyers, they were all telling me, you need to fold. You need, you could go chapter. There's so many chapters you can go. People think it's just chapter 11 or chapter 9. They got so many chapters you can file for. And I said, but I have a subscription service. And they were like, yeah. I said, I would have to pay all of it. It was like, no. If you go chapter, forget about those people. It's like, no, I don't think you understand. These people always believed in my product, right? And they said, well, you go chapter 9, you don't have to pay these people back. That money's gone. That's their bad luck. And I went, no. And we looked around and I said, I got my accountant away from my attorney and I said, figure out how much it would cost for me to pay every single one of these people back the money I owe them. And they told me that number, and it was a scary number. And then I got together with one of my guys and I said, what would it take for me to make that much product and give them the product I owe them? And the number was equally as scary. And I said, you know what? We're going to stay in business. It's the same thing you did. We couldn't turn around and walk back. You can't tuck your tail and run the other way. And I called it walking through the fire. And I got to tell you, it was a rough year. It was maybe a rough year and a half. But when you get to the other side of something like that, you become who you are today, Will. And that's mine is way more recent than yours, but I'm going to be on my deathbed. I'm going to remember this more than anything else, right? You can. I've always said, when you get around with other people that run businesses, everyone, if they still have a business, they're somewhat successful, right? You're on the right side of the ledger, but everyone likes to talk about those failures because the failures are what makes us more successful on the road. I call it the FQ, the failure quotient. The number of times you can fail and come back one more time. And it really sounds like that's what you had to do. You were in the middle of it. And I'm sure every day you were talking to your wife and everyone else going, can I get some more stuff, some more chemicals in here and just go back to what I was doing before? But you can't, right? You're right in the middle of it. You can't unsee what you know.
Yeah, and what was involved was our farm. And what that meant is my house, the house my children lived in, my vehicle, my truck, their vehicle. I mean, it was everything. There was no separation of assets. It was all in one boat, and the boat was not looking good. But I was very, very fortunate, and I'll always be grateful for that. This is by this time it was early 2000s, and people were starting to talk about grass-fed beef. Until about 2000, you never heard grass-fed beef, but people were talking about it, and nobody really had much. But I had much, and it was before they could import foreign beef and label it product of USA. So what they had to sell was in this country. So we were able to we were the first grass-fed beef to be sold by Whole Foods Market and Publix and Kroger and some others, and that the timing was just so fortunate. I wish I could tell you it was brilliant timing, but it was lucky timing.
Yeah. Well, look, you know what I say, you keep working, the harder you work, the luckier you get. You just have to keep playing, and one day
Yeah.
it comes in your direction. Yeah, you're right. I mean, when I think back to it, you never heard of grass fed, and then you started hearing grass fed, grain finished. You would hear all kinds of different things,
Yeah.
and so you were in that game. I mean, I know I lived real close. I don't know if you know of Joe Salinger up here, but he's right around the corner from me, and he does the same sort of thing. So it's a bunch of you guys out there doing this really cool stuff. There's another guy. I want to say he's in Monterey, Virginia, way on the other side of the hill, and they do the same thing. They move the cattle and they keep moving them. They eat up the grass and you know drop the manure on the land. They move it. I've never seen greener fields in my life. I've never seen healthier fields in my life. Right? Is this the kind of thing you guys are doing? How many acres you got over there, Will?
It is. The cattle are on 3,200 acres, and that 3,200 acres is divided up into about 158 paddocks.
Okay.
And we move the cattle from one paddock to the next every single day during the growing season, which for us, luckily, is about 10 months a year. And it is really, it's done wonders for the land. It's an emulation. It's an imperfect emulation, but it's an emulation of the herds of bison moving back and forth from Mexico to Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Hard animal impact grazing today, and then a long recovery time for the plants to get over it, and then another hard impact. And that's the way these plants evolved to grow. That's not the way we did it, but that's the way it was meant to be. The microbial activity, the mineralization of the soil, all these things work so well with that hard animal impact and then long recovery time.
I want to get into that in just a second, but let me say hi to one of my sponsors, Villa Capelli Olive Oil, the longest running sponsor of the show. Villa Capelli. Folks, we're talking about regenerative farming here today. Villa Capelli, people ask me all the time, say, why are they always in stock? Because when they run out of olives, that's it. They don't go get olives from Spain or Greece or anywhere else. All of those olives come from their farm in Puglia, Italy. And when they run out, that's it. That is it. Now, in the United States, maybe our guests know something about this, but in the United States, you can cut oil up to 40%. USDA allows you to cut it up to 40%. You can still put 100% pure olive oil right there on the package. How do you think Bertolli, we were just talking about Kroger. Think about all the stores Kroger has. Think about all of the stores everybody has. Walmart, that sells groceries. You got, every food line. I could keep naming them, right? Everyone sells grocery. Every one of those stores you walk into, they got Bertolli's. There's not that many olives in the world. And you look at all these other companies that sell. You think that's all 100% pure olive oil? You're wrong. It's not. It's cut 40% with seed oils. You don't want that crap in you. Go get the good stuff, Villa Capelli, because when they're out, they're out. People call me and complain to me, Vinny, but the Villa Capelli was no. Me too. When they're out, I can't get it. You know why? That's why I keep 3 and 4 3-liter tins at my house. So when they run out, I'm good until they make more olives. Villa Capelli, you want to save 10%? Put in promo code Vinnie, VINNIE. 10%, promo code Vinnie, VINNIE. Every single time, not just the first time. You save money every time. So go to Villa Capelli and put my name in. Don't put a wimpy Y on there or you're not going to get your discount. That would be your fault. VillaCapelli.com and put my name in. We're talking to Will Harris. Will, right before the show, I was talking to my right-hand man that works for me, runs my companies, Chris. And he goes, what are you up to? I said, I'm getting ready to talk to this guy, Will Harris. He goes, oh, who's Will Harris? I said, he's got White Oak Farm. And he goes, oh, I used to get his stuff. When Chris lived in Texas, he got your stuff. So obviously you guys have some kind of you can mail it, right? How does
We
that
do.
work?
We do. I started the. Well, first of all, I'll say that my farm. I'm sitting right now in Clay County, Georgia, which was the poorest county in America in 2020. We climbed the ladder. There's probably 25 or 30 poorer than us now. But I knew when I went in this business that I did not have a local market. So when I went in this business, grass-fed beef business, I was focused on grocery, and we were able to get in grocery, as I told you. That business is really we're still in grocery, but that business has gone backwards badly, mostly because of country of origin labeling. Big beef companies can bring product in from 20-something other countries and label it product of the USA, and that hurt us badly in grocery. My daughter started our online store, whiteoakpastures.com, and today we ship product to 48 states. I really don't want to. I really want to sell in the deep South to let other producers sell in other parts of the country. I don't want to be a national company, but currently we are.
When you say you guys ship, so are you vertically integrated? Are you guys doing everything right there on your farm? You slaughtering, packing, everything?
We do. I built a USDA red meat slaughter plant and a USDA poultry slaughter plant. And later I built an order fulfillment center, and we take orders here on the farm. We have 170 employees in what has been the poorest county in America. Very, very proud to be able to do that.
Well, I got news for you. You're going to be in the nationwide business for a long time. I'm guessing Alaska and Hawaii are the only two places you can't ship because of dry ice situations and keeping it refrigerated. I got news for you. You can want to be in one part of the country, but I think you're stuck again working with the whole country, because that's where we are now. I do documentaries whenever I get bored, and the third one I did was called Beyond Impossible, where I talked about Impossible Meat, Beyond Burgers, and or Beyond Meat and Impossible Burgers and all that crap. But we got into it a bit. That's okay. We got into it a bit, and in that movie, and we don't just talk about that stuff, but we talk about how you can bring stuff in from Argentina and go product of the United States. How does that work? It doesn't make sense to me. Why do they allow it, or do we know why they allow it?
Well, I guess the short answer would be lobbyist. It's in the best interest of big meat companies to be able to shop for product at the cheapest market in the world and import it into the most lucrative market in the world, which is the United States. And they do that. Prior to 2015, they had to label it. We had what's called mandatory country of origin labeling. They had to label it product of Belize or Argentina, Australia, New Zealand, whatever it was. In 2015, they changed that. And if any value was added in this country, they could call it product of the USA. And, I certainly was not there when it happened, but I got to believe that big meat company lobbyists, caused that change. Certainly the consumers did not.
Lobbyists always bother me. I've always said, people, I always use the NRA as, it's like whenever I try to explain food or drug lobbyists, I'll go, let's just take the NRA, right? Because it's a lightning rod. It just is. If you're on the right, you love the NRA. If you're on the left, you hate the NRA. Yet we've had president after president and Congress and Senate after Congress and Senate that was completely on the left, yet not one gun law changed, which means the people on the left are taking as much money from the NRA as the people on the right. They just don't talk about it. right? And when I explain that to people that way, they go, "Huh," and I'll say to them, I'll say, "Can you remember the last time any gun law was changed?" You know, I say, "No, I can't." I was like, "Well, let me tell you, it was a Republican in office at the time.
Wow.
It was Reagan after he got shot and the Brady Law came about. That was it." And by the way, the law was too weak, but it's there. Right?
Wow.
Right?
I've been I've been to DC several times in my life to lobby for something, and I don't do it anymore. But when I was a young man and I'd be asked to go, I'd go, and you'd meet with the senator, the representative, with a couple of 20-something-year-old aides, and everybody'd smile and shake hands, and the senator or the rep would leave, and you'd be in there with the two aides, and they'd write down every word you said and nod the whole time you were talking. And when I'd leave, I think, wow, I put points on the board. But then nothing would change. And it took me a long time because I'm Southern and agricultural and slow. But I finally figured out that, the lobbyist was coming in after I left with a suitcase full of money, and what I said didn't matter anymore. So I don't do that anymore. I don't put myself through that.
It's a waste of time. It always has been. Look, I've been saying for years, it's like when I was a kid, we had the presidential physical fitness test, right? Every kid in the country had to go to PE and had to take this test. And it was like, listen, I don't want a dime, government. Put me in that position. Let me be the head of the presidential and get that back in school. Guess who ain't getting the phone call? Right?
Yeah.
I've helped more people. I have a teaching degree. I've never used it. I have a degree in exercise physiology, and I have one in nutrition. And guess who they don't want on the presidential physical fitness thing? They don't want me. A man who's begging them to take him for free. I'm here for free. And by the way, now I live exactly 2 hours from Washington. I can drive there on any given day and do whatever you guys need me to do. But guess who they don't want? This guy, right? They don't want the truth, right? And when I tell people lobbies, I always use that NRA thing because it's the one you can see plainer than anything else. They're all taking money. They all get to office broke, and they all leave there with 2 and 3 houses. So how in the hell does that happen, right?
It's not because they're in the cattle business. I can tell you that.
No, cattlemen. I got friends in the cattle business. They don't have 2 and 3 houses, right? And I've never seen people work harder in my life. I really haven't, right? So, yeah, it drives me crazy, and I love that there are guys like you. And like I said, I've had him in my documentaries and on this show and everywhere else. I've had these professors of agronomy come in and talk about just how important it is to have these cattle grazing to save the land. We need to bring more bison back. We need to bring everything. We need more things. We need more ruminants grazing, number one. I've had Frank Mitlerner from UC Davis, who's been on this show, that says the CO2 carbons that these animals are creating is not causing the problem that, cow farts and cow burps are not causing the ozone problem, right? Because that's regenerative, that kind of CO2. We have all of these experts, yet Washington, D.C. does not care, right? And it's for the reason you just said. Any thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's just the control of big food over the politicians and the influencers is incredible. This recent change in the food pyramid is the first positive thing I've seen literally in my lifetime, and I don't know how efficacious that's going to be, but at least it's a change in the right direction.
Yeah, my first documentary, the poster that's behind us that you probably can't see, it's called Fat, a Documentary. We were the first people that were yelling, the pyramid is completely wrong. And I've already started yelling about the new pyramid because they've done that comical thing where they've turned it upside down and says we need more meat and all this kind of stuff. And that all seems great. But then when you read At first they gave us a 10-page document, and now we have the whole thing. When you read it, they're not increasing meat a whole lot at all, right? They're telling you on the pyramid, oh yeah, here's a cute pyramid. We flipped it over. Now you can have meat. You can have bacon, you can have butter, what have you. But they want you to have so little saturated fat that in municipalities and the military and school lunches for kids, and public schools and everything, nothing will change. Now, I'm glad that there was a start, but there's a lot more work. And I'm 63 now. I don't know if I'm going to see it in my lifetime, right? I want to see it before I die. I'm going to be healthy. I can afford to buy grass-fed beef. I can afford to eat high-fat dairy. I can afford cheese. I can afford all the good stuff because we're empty nesters and it's just me and my wife, and we can afford to eat good until the day we die. But guess what? There are a lot of people out there that won't have that option, right? And as long as they keep guys like you down, it's going to be a problem. Is there a way out to make you guys more prominent?
I'm delighted with the progress we've made. It's certainly not what I wish it was, but the number of people that are. When I first started selling my product in Whole Foods markets and public supermarkets, I had to explain what grass-fed beef was from ground zero. There's a lot more understanding out there now than there was then. I think it's growing. I think it's going to grow very, very slowly. I think it probably will have to. I don't think we can suddenly produce enough beef. If we're talking about beef, I forget beef, enough good food for everybody to eat. I don't think we can do that. And there are a lot of poor people, and I don't want them hungry. I don't want anybody hungry because they can only buy the best. If I can't buy the best, I want something else. I want other people to have something else. So, I think it's going to be a very slow process. I think that we didn't get here overnight. We've been on this road for about 70 years since World War II was over, and I think that's the way it's going to be.
Yeah, I would just like to see. We've seen some changes. We've seen what's going on in Washington now, and there seems to be some upheaval. And of course, they've made that political because the guy in there doing it is on the right. Even though I think he's a Democrat and he's a Kennedy. I really can't. That's why I don't do politics, because I can't figure out what's going on. I've tried. My head just spins. And I know some people are going, wait, you agree with Kennedy? Well, he's done some good things, right? I don't know, but he hates this and that. I was like, I don't care. Just we need somebody doing something because nothing was happening before. So I'm happy with that. And I'm glad that we're having it. How do people find you, Will? How do they find your company? And how do people get to you to buy your products?
Probably the website, social media. Our advertising budget is zero. We just don't advertise, can't advertise. We do. Certainly it's not me, but my daughter is active on social media, Instagram and Facebook and all those things. We've got a website that she and others have put a lot of time and effort into. It's whiteoakpastures.com. Pastures is plural. It's whiteoakpastures.com.
And Will, if people go, let me just ask you real quickly: if people go there, can they order your meat and have it shipped? So right now you're shipping to 48 states.
Correct. We have an online store, and you can order it and ship it to 48 states.
Well, I'm going to definitely, now that I'm thinking about it, it seems like we get your ground beef in here, and I want to ask you about that. I was getting ready to go, but I want to ask you about ground beef. I think we get your ground beef here. So my understanding, Will, is that if I walked into a regular grocery store and just got regular ground beef, that ground beef could have come from, and I don't want to exaggerate, I've been told 7, 8, 10 cattle. Like that's not from. Is that a truth or is that you tell me?
far more than that. Far more than that. In this country, most of the beef that's imported is lean trim, and the reason for that is most of the cattle we raise in this country are fattened on grain in feedlots, and they're obese. They have a tremendous amount of tallow or beef fat that is literally not marketable. I mean, you can't sell but so much fat. So what the industry does is it brings in very, very lean beef from Uruguay, Australia, New Zealand, Brazil, and blends it in with the tallow from the slaughter of feedlot cattle. So it's, basically they take two inedible products and make an edible product. And
Wow.
And there's no telling how many animals' DNA is in that final product. These are huge meat plants, so it'd be a tremendous amount of the DNA from a tremendous number of animals.
Well, while you were just talking, I looked up White Oak Pastures, and it turns out you're the beef we use for our chili here. We use 3 pounds at a time, and that makes 2 days worth of chili for me and my wife. And and by the way, I don't do any of the shopping. I'm blushing here. I don't do any of the shopping. She brings the food on, but she knows that I'm not going to stand for crap, right? So it turns out I've been eating your ground beef for a long time, and it's very possible that I've been eating your New York strips and your and everything else, because she buys a lot of meat from Whole Foods. She also buys. Are you in Wegmans at all?
I'm not sure. My daughter handles our marketing, but we're in Publix. We got kicked out of Whole Foods when Amazon bought them, sadly. But we were in Whole Foods for a long time.
Yeah, we're getting you from somewhere, because I'm looking at your label and it's like, oh, that label comes in this house. It might come from Publix. It might come from who knows.
If you buy our beef, it'll have our label. We've had a number of stores that wanted us to sell it to them for them to label, and we just won't do that.
Good. Well, I want you to keep up the great work, because think about that, folks. 2 inedible products to make a product. That's what you can end up with in ground beef. You go here, you get the good stuff right off the bat. Go check out everything Will Harris is doing, and his daughters and everyone else that's working there. White Oak Pastures. White Oak Pastures. I don't have a promo code. This is not any kind. I just wanted to talk to this guy. I saw that he was in the cattle business. I always like talking to these people. They always bring the goods. And I really feel like Will did that for us here today. So go check out White Oak Pastures and pick it. As a matter of fact, Chris told me you're going to love this. Turns out I just went and looked at their labels, and it turns out we use their product here at the house. So go check out everything they're doing there. And I can tell you their food is delicious, because we wouldn't get it twice unless it was. We're we're not sitting here, oh, yuck, this is horrible beef. Let's get it again. So go check out everything Will is doing. Will, anything you want to say on the way out here?
Yeah, I want to say thank you for having me on your show, and thank you for buying my beef. I appreciate both of them.
Well, no, thank you for putting it out there, and thank you for making a great product. Will, you got to hang on until I close out the show, because the way the computer, I don't understand how it works, but you need to be here for a bit. So, folks, go check out White Oak Pastures, and check out everything Will and his daughters are doing over there. You know what to do. We all go shopping on Amazon. Before you go to Amazon, go to VinnieTortorich.com. Puts a little coal on the fire, gets my train down the track, and we're able to keep the show free for a gazillion years in a row. VinnieTortorich.com/workout. If you want to pick out the new workouts, Chris has put together a whole new thing now. You can have a tracker in your pocket on your phone. You go to the gym, you just put that tracker on your phone. You don't have to bring the paper anymore. You can just, like everyone else, stare at your phone while you're working out. So go check that out, VinnieTortorich.com/workout. On behalf of Will Harris from White Oak Pastures, my name is Vinnie Tortorich. Put life into living and do it with enthusiasm.